hearing of the Senate Human Services Committee to order. First, I want to thank you to my colleagues, to the leadership and staff of the Department of Human Services, and to all participants that are joining us today. I also want to acknowledge and thank members of the House Human Services Committee, Chair Schumacher and Chair Neuer. We invited them to participate in this conversation because this committee has a long history of working in a bicameral and bipartisan manner on complex human services issues. And it was important to me that this oversight discussion reflect that tradition. This is the first of two hearings convened by this committee to examine the department's implementation of enhanced Medicaid prepayment reviews and the resulting impacts on providers, service continuity, and Minnesotans who rely on these programs. And before turning fully on the substance of today's hearing, I want to briefly offer some context, both personal and institutional, because it really matters in my understanding of why this hearing is necessary and how I approach this work. For the past 7 months, I have been in and I am still in recovery from a vicious attempted murder of my wife and our daughter. And during that time, I've not been able to engage fully the way I normally would want to. I remain committed to this committee and followed the developments closely, but much of that period placed me in a position of an observer, watching decisions unfold, reviewing materials as I was able, and listening carefully to concerns raised by providers, advocates, and members of this body on both sides of the aisle and both chambers. As chair of this committee, oversight is not an abstract responsibility for me. It is core to why this committee exists. To be limited in my ability to fully engage while watching major policy and operational shifts occur in programs under this committee's jurisdiction was deeply frustrating, particularly given the work this committee had already done and the tools that we had already provided. Over the past several years, and especially over the last 3 legislative sessions, this committee did not sit idle. We held hearings, we reviewed audits, we worked with the department's leadership, and importantly, we gave the department the tools it asked for, tools intended to strengthen program integrity while preserving stability and continuity of care. You're going to hear me say that word multiple times today. Those tools were not provided with the expectation of a blunt or reactive response. They were provided so that integrity issues could be addressed strategically, thoughtfully, and with precision. From the vantage point of recovery, it was difficult to watch what many providers described as a hammer approach emerge. Broad payment suspensions, unclear timelines, and reactive implementation, rather than the measured approach that this committee envisioned. That experience informs today's hearing. Today, our primary focus is on the department. Tomorrow, we will hear primarily from providers, advocates, and stakeholders delivering services and those receiving those services. If time allows today, we may also hear limited provider testimony to ensure that this committee has a complete and accurate record. So I want to be very clear at the outset about why this hearing is necessary. This committee takes program integrity seriously. Protecting public dollars and maintaining public trust in Minnesota's Medicaid system are core responsibilities of both the legislature and the department. And over the past several years, members of this committee across parties and across chambers have consistently pressed for stronger oversight tools and better safeguards. But just as important as identifying risk is how the response to that risk is designed and implemented. Oversight mechanisms are then rolled out without sufficient clarity, capacity, or transition planning can create instability that undermines service delivery. And when that happens, the costs are not abstract. They are borne by those providing services, and most importantly, by the Minnesotans whose health, housing, and stability depend on uninterrupted care. That balance between accountability and access is what brings us here today. Over the past 3 legislative sessions, this committee has repeatedly examined program integrity challenges with the department and the administration through audits, the legislative hearings, statutory changes, 23 pages of statutory changes, and direct engagement with the department's leadership. This committee did not merely identify problems, we discussed specific solutions. Those solutions included clearer provider guidance, earlier intervention tools, improved data analytics, stronger reporting requirements, phased implementation strategies, and safeguards to prevent service disruption while reviews occur. These were not theoretical conversations. They were grounded in real program experience and were intended to be implemented before disruption reached providers and beneficiaries. Nowhere is that history more relevant than in housing stabilization. Housing stabilization was flagged early as a program requiring close attention, and this committee raised concerns about rapid growth, provider confusion, inconsistent standards, and the need for stronger administrative controls. We discussed fixes. We discussed guardrails. We discussed the importance of timely guidance and capacity building within the department. During last year's conference committee, specifically during the special session, and I will say that even though it was the first time the House rolled the Senate on bill language, I will say this legislature on a bipartisan and bicameral basis provided the department with the support and tools it said were needed. Those discussions occurred well before the implementation of enhanced prepayment reviews. As a result, it's appropriate for this committee to ask, how were those identified solutions implemented? What fixes moved forward and which did not? And why do providers continue to raise the same concerns that were discussed years ago? On October 29th, DHS announced the expansion of enhanced prepayment reviews for a set of Medicaid services identified as high risk. Following that announcement, providers across Minnesota began reporting suspended claims, inconsistent review timelines, unclear documentation requirements, and significant cash flow disruptions. We have heard from providers who rely on predictable reimbursement to pay staff, maintain those home supports, and keep services in place. We have heard from organizations serving seniors, people with disabilities, and individuals experiencing housing instability, populations for whom even short service interruptions can have long-term consequences. Today, this committee is simply not asking whether risk exists. We are asking how the department moved from years of identified solutions to a system that resulted in widespread disruption and inconsistency about continuity of care for those receiving services. Specifically, we are seeking detailed answers to questions including, how did the department evaluate the program integrity solutions discussed and authorized by this committee over the past 3 years? We have 23 pages of statutory authority that we gave the department over the past 3 years. Which of those solutions were fully implemented prior to the rollout of enhanced prepayment reviews? While certain housing stabilization safeguards not fully operational before full suspensions began, and why were similar issues seen in the ICS program? What internal capacity does the department have to conduct timely reviews, and how was the capacity assessed before implementation? And what safeguards were in place to ensure continuity of care while claims were under review? I'm going to repeat the continuity of care because that gets to the why we do what we do. And that was the first thing we talked about 3 years ago when this committee formed. Those questions go directly to governance, execution, and accountability. Members' oversight does not end when solutions are identified. It requires follow-through and evaluation. So let me be also clear about the tone and intent of this hearing. This is not an exercise in assigning blame. I do need to address something directly and on the record. It has been deeply disheartening to hear the personalization of some professionals in this room, accusations directed at me about this opening statement. I have also heard comments suggesting that individuals should shame Hoffman as he is doing this because of his ego. Come on, people, this is not okay. This is not who we are. That adds to the dysfunction that too often distracts why we do this work in the first place. Why we do this. The responsibility of this committee is oversight, not personal grievance. I expect that standard to be respected. This hearing is about understanding decisions, evaluating outcomes, and determining whether adjustments may be necessary. Those adjustments must be informed by facts, experience, not personal attacks. To the department, this committee has always recognized the complexity of your work and the seriousness of program integrity challenges. But complexity does not excuse incomplete implementation or unclear communication. We expect clear explanations, data-driven answers, and transparency about where implementation has fallen short of intent. To my colleagues, both Senate and House, I encourage questions that examine not only what was decided, but how those decisions were carried out and what impacts resulted. Our history of bipartisan, bicameral work demands nothing less. Minnesotans following the hearing, your care, your home services stability, and your trust in these systems remain central to the committee's work. Program integrity and access to care are not competing values. They are interdependent responsibilities. Our obligation is to ensure that one is not achieved at the expense of the other, and that known solutions are not fully implemented. Course correction must occur. If the record developed in this hearing demonstrates that adjustments are necessary, this committee, on a bicameral, bipartisan commitment, will not hesitate to act. And with that, I now turn over to our chairs, Joe Schumacher, and then to Chair Newer, and then to the Republican lead, Jordan Rasmussen. Chair Schumacher.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be the first to say it's good to see you here.
Thank you, Joe.
I think one word that you spoke in your opening remarks that rings in my head again and again is the word oversight. And I think that's a big role that we can do a lot more with if we're given the resources to do that. And so I'm glad that we finally have the opportunity to get some of the answers that we've been seeking for months about the prepayment review process. You mentioned about how we ended the session last year with a bipartisan work on a bill that none of us liked, but we could accept because we knew that there was a greater good there. And ever since then, we've had a lot of trouble in a lot of different areas than the stuff we were working on in that budget. And it's become harder and harder to get the answers that we need in order to do the job that we're expected to do. The communication has been a big issue for us. Not only notification of when these policies are being implemented, but then the answers that follow up. I have instances where the response that an industry group might get is different than the response that I might get, is different than a response that a direct provider might get from the same department. And the responses seem to get more delayed as time goes on, and seem to become more in reference from, it sounds more legal than before. It sounds like lawyers are writing the responses that we're getting when we're just trying to get answers for providers. And so I hope that one question, because that begs a question, I hope that one question that can be addressed today is the responses that we're getting, are those responses in procedure the way it's supposed to be done or the way it's actually getting done? And I hope we can get that explained to us throughout this process. This whole rolling out has been a mess and really is a failure for the people that we try and serve. And this has given me a whole different perspective on how the legislative process works, the checks and balances of things. Like I said, the word oversight has been on my mind more and more. It's never been like it has to be now. It's quite the transition for the work that we do in this committee and for the things that we have to accomplish. And so we're hearing now from providers who have to close down because of the decisions that were made by the department and the approach that they're taking. They have staff who are taking their clients to hospitals because there's no one there to care for them. The fallout that we're seeing today has real consequences, and this is just what we know today. We know that there's going to be more as well. And at the same time, I do understand and appreciate that there's a bit of a balancing act. We directed the department to go after the fraud. They went after the fraud. Now we're going to go after the department for how they did that. But to your point again about the oversight, there's a role in all of this, and we have to be able to appreciate the balance there, but also we're the ones that are most responsible to the constituents and to the people that are being served. And so thank you for having this hearing, and thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to what we find out today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Other Chair Newer. And it's good to be back, Joe, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome back. It's always good to have you back, Chair Hoffman. But let me take the opportunity to state this. Your return after the horrific attempted assassination of you, Yvette, and Hope is a powerful reminder of what public service can demand and how strong Minnesotans can be when we refuse to surrender to fear. But we should be honest about the challenges we face. Political violence, political intimidation, and political retributions are escalating. Our state, our communities are being pushed towards chaos. We continue to grieve the murder of Speaker Melissa Hartman and her husband, Matt, an unbearable loss that still hangs over our state. We have now seen violence tied to the federal government's invasion in Minnesota. Renee Good was murdered by a federal immigration agent in Minneapolis on January 7, 2026. And Alex Brady, a caregiver, was also murdered a few days ago. Another encounter involving federal immigration officers. And just last night, Representative Ilhan Omar was attacked in Minneapolis in an event that was supposed to provide a town hall discussion sprayed with a known liquid. Another disturbance act meant to intimidate and silence those who are in public service. We cannot ignore what is fueling this. And the fight that we're in, as we speak today, we're at risk of what's coming from the federal government. Despite all those challenges, we are now at risk of losing $2 billion for the services that are meant to help those who need the most. I cannot sit here and say that there were no challenges. We do have plenty of challenges. But using the power of the federal government to attack the state from different angles, weaponizing the federal government against our state. As we deal with these challenges, we have to also balance of what the outcome should be. We need to think about that individual, the recipient, who's a victim here, and now going to be victimized, not only through the state actions, but the federal government again. Whatever we do, we need to consider the consequences of our actions. We have to take accountability in one part. We have to require transparency, but at the same time, we have to be cognizant of our own actions and how we approach this issue. Our own colleagues have stated they've invited agitators and other individuals to come to the state to expose the fraud without any clear evidence and verification, using that to justify of what's happening on our streets today. We cannot let that sit. We cannot allow those actions to create more harm. My colleagues, Chair Hoffman and Co-Chair Joe Schumacher, have already stated some of the challenges that we face. But we have to be grounded on who we are as Minnesotans. We're better than what's happening. To that, today we will be listening to the department to understand those issues that we will be discussing throughout the session and how we can better our systems. But don't forget the individuals who are now going to be impacted. Someone may not be able to get off the bed because we made bad decisions. Someone may end up dead, as we have seen other individuals that have died. Let me remind everyone, we have responsibility to protect the residents of Minnesota from the aggression coming from the federal government or from any agency within state government. That's our responsibility. Those are our constituents. That's the bottom line. Not focused on program, but focused on people that are getting those services. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your invitation. I look forward to a robust discussion as we sit here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Newer, and thank you for your kind words. It is nice to be back. We're going to go to Republican lead Rasmussen for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I speak on behalf of the entire Senate Human Services Committee when I say it is truly wonderful to be back in committee with you in this room. And we've done a lot of great work as this committee, and your heart is needed in this work right now. And so it's great to have you back here at the table. And I also, Chair Hoffman, want to thank you for calling this really important set of hearings, where we're not just going to hear from DHS, we're going to hear from Minnesotans who've been affected by the decisions that their state government has made. So I thank you for making time for that. I think, Mr. Chair, it's important to note we're going to be talking about the impacts of the prepayment review process that was implemented by Governor Walz's executive order, but it's also important to understand how we got here in the first place. And the key challenge that Minnesota is that.
I didn't mute you, man. I don't know what you're looking at me for.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if the mic's back on or not.
They're weird. There's that echo. There's a big echo. You good?
Well, if there's anything I can do to adjust it, let me know. But thank you, Mr. Chair. And what I was saying is we're here today to talk about the governor's prepayment review process, right, that DHS is implementing from his executive order. But it's important to understand how we got here. And we got here because Minnesota has a fraud problem. And this is something that's not new and has been on our radar for quite some time. If you go back to 2019, when there were known program integrity issues at the Department of Human Services, DHS rolled out what they called Operation Swiss Watch. And the idea behind that was DHS was going to operate like a Swiss watch, never miss a beat, and it was going to protect Minnesotans' tax dollars and program integrity. Unfortunately, we've seen these efforts fail to protect human services programs. They failed. On January 22nd of last year, under the Senate's power sharing agreement, we held a hearing in this committee on fraud because it was a concern and a priority for us. On that day, we had DHS leadership tell us that there were more rumors of fraud than actual fraud. And when I asked DHS leadership why Minnesota had a fraud problem, we heard from the table that Minnesota doesn't have a fraud problem. And there was no evidence that Minnesota's fraud problem was worse. That was about a year ago from today. Since then, we've seen the Department of Human Services shut down an entire service line due to extremely high levels of fraudulent billing. We've seen DHS freeze all payments for 13 high-risk programs where they effectively admitted they couldn't tell a good provider from a fraudulent one. We have an estimate from the U.S. Attorney's Office that DHS fraud could likely be in the billions of dollars. And recently, just a couple of weeks ago, we had an OLA report that showed that manager-level employees at DHS falsified documents to avoid accountability from state auditors. Minnesotans are outraged, and rightfully so. The public has little confidence that their tax dollars that we're all entrusted with are going to where they're supposed to go. And we have a lot of work to do to stop the fraud, hold those responsible to account, and restore confidence in Minnesota's human services programs. This is vital work to protect both taxpayers and to protect the most vulnerable among us who rely on these services. And I look forward to the conversation today and to work to accomplish both of those goals. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Lead Rasmussen. And thank you. You're right, the most vulnerable. What I just heard from the three leaders that we had up here was about protecting the most vulnerable. Thank you for, validating that. So with that, members, the department has Commissioner Shireen Gandhi, Deputy Commissioner, and I'm sorry, Mr. Connolly, I called you Director. I didn't realize you were Deputy Commissioner in my letter to you after the October 29th. Was it October? And then Ms. Grom, thank you, your Legislative Director. There are also members, other folks from the department that are here in case there's a question that you all have that needs to be answered by somebody else. Elise Bailey, of course, is the Budget Director. Ari Didion, Legislative Director, OIG. Kyle Ingram, Nikki Farrago, Jen Amundson, John Eichten, George McNulty, and then Risakat Adisa, help me out. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I know you, Risakat. How are you? I'm sorry. I have trauma brain. I can look at somebody's face and go, I don't remember your name. I have to wait. So bear with me on that. So with that, Commissioner Gandhi, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chair Hoffman. It is wonderful to have you back. We are overjoyed to have you in this chair. Really appreciate it. I appreciate your opening comments about blame and personal attacks. We certainly feel that at DHS as well. I think there's no place for any of that. I don't know who said that about you, but it is absolutely unacceptable. I don't know anybody personally at DHS that feels that way. So we have a lot of work to do together. I am a person that likes to work with a diversity of viewpoints. I believe that's the best way to get to the strongest solutions. And so I look forward to your approach of the bicameral, bipartisan human services solution, because we really do all need to work together. It's not just the agency, it's the legislature, it's the agency, it's our counties, our managed care organizations, the provider community, tribal nations, and the recipients themselves, as well as advocacy organizations that are going to help us find the right path forward in Minnesota. I also want to acknowledge and thank providers, in particular for the conversations that we've been having lately. It's, as you know, stepping into this role just in February, a little less than a year ago, we have been under sort of the white hot light increasingly and have had capacity challenges in working with all of the various constituents. We're recalibrating and had a number of good conversations with providers lately and have some ideas have some plans to work with them going forward so we have a better approach there. I want to note that safeguarding Minnesota's medical assistance program is really paramount to the people of Minnesota. And I heard from each of you that spoke that protecting the people of Minnesota is the most important thing. And I agree with you on that. Whether it's working to keep the elderly in homes longer, whether it's helping children and youth with autism get the supports they need, whether it's helping people with disabilities to live in community and thrive. Without the Medicaid program, Minnesota would be sicker and poorer without this federal-state partnership. Almost half of the people in Medicaid are children, and about another 125,000 are people with disabilities. So we have to partner to protect our Medicaid program, and our Medicaid program is under attack. From where I sit, I see fraudulent providers trying to steal funds needed for critical services that they are not delivering to people, putting people at risk. It's damaging the trust of other legitimate providers in that community. It's damaging the trust of the government. And we're seeing evolving schemes. And so we need to keep working to get ahead and keep ahead of the fraudulent actors out there. We're also seeing unprecedented federal actions. So as Chair Noor stated, the federal government is seeking to withhold $2 billion from the Medicaid program. Over a biennium, that would be $4 billion. That would be a catastrophic amount. I sat last year with those of you in this committee and during the session to try to hit a target of $1.1 billion. And we know how painful that was. So just imagine the catastrophic cuts to Minnesota if we had to cut $4 billion. What we're facing by CMS is not corrective action, it's punitive action. We have been working on this for more than a year, and we have been increasing our efforts and accelerating it month over month. CMS got involved after our work began to fight fraud and to strengthen program integrity. When I stepped into this role in February, I elevated Assistant Commissioner John Connolly to Deputy Commissioner because it seemed important to me that the Medicaid Director would have full control of the Medicaid program and all the benefits and services under that program. I also had to quickly identify and hire a strong Inspector General and was fortunate to hire Inspector General James Clark, who has 10 years of prosecuting Medicaid fraud. Since the time I stepped into Commissioner, I have designated services as high risk to give us more tools in oversight. Many of these services were not licensed services, and we had limited tools to administer them. The Inspector General has given increased attention to site visits, to have eyes in facilities, looking at autism centers, looking at adult day centers. We worked with you all to pass licensure for autism services. And in September, the governor's executive order, as you noted, accelerated our efforts. We've disenrolled thousands of inactive providers that frees up our administrative capability to focus on those providers that are providing services. We've launched an enhanced prepayment review for fee-for-service in the 14 high-risk services. And we've also put a moratorium on licenses and providers in the high-risk areas, along with an exception to make sure that there is access to services. We also have a corrective action plan due to CMS at the end of this week. So all of that has been quick work that's been happening over the past 12 months, always with the intent of seeking to get the balance right, of putting people first and protecting the program so that the services are there for the people. Now, we know that we don't always get it right, and I take full accountability for places where we have had a misstep or a challenge in implementing something and not implementing it as it intended. Quickly on the next slide, I just want to highlight that this work has been going on since before I stepped into this role in the fall of '24, is really when we began ramping up, and we have been accelerating ever since to meet what we are finding in terms of program integrity changes. But I want you to know that, the next slide, I want you to know that the care and safety of people is most important. And we know that person-centered practices are essential. We have to understand, respect, and honor the preferences that each person thinks are important. And so one of the things that we do is work closely with lead agencies who also use a person-centered approach to make sure that we have safe transitions in care when we are taking program integrity actions. So for example, if we have a provider that is not providing services, so they're supposed to be providing services to individuals, but they are not, and we're receiving complaints about not receiving services, and DHS needs to implement a payment withhold, then we institute a safe transitions period. What we do in that is I reach out to the county leaders and I make sure that the county leaders know that this is happening and check in with their case managers. Our team reaches out directly to case managers, lets them know how many individuals are affected by this payment withhold, and we provide a period of time that allows the counties and the people that are impacted to transfer to a safer setting. It is extremely upsetting to see the MARC reports and the complaints that are coming in from families, from case managers, from the recipients themselves. We don't take a payment withhold lightly. In those situations where a payment withhold is in place, it's because we have multiple reports of neglect. And those people in those settings are at risk. So it's very important for us to have safe transitions. I want you to know that we are not just doing that abruptly. It's very thoughtfully, thoroughly done, and we realize, even with that, we realize that it's really challenging to find placement for individuals. One of the things that I hope we can work on together over the coming months is to really working with the legislature to improve the access to housing. One of the challenges we have with some of these services is that they are provided in conjunction with housing, and Medicaid cannot pay for housing. And so if we are having problems in the housing community, that exacerbates the Medicaid challenges and the care for the people in those services. So I just want to reiterate that it's going to take all of us working together, the department, the legislators, providers, managed care organizations, tribes, and our communities to set up the program integrity safeguards that we need and to protect people and the taxpayers' dollars. So look forward to working with you in the future on that and the discussion today and tomorrow. John Connolly is going to now share more about our person-centered improvement, our prepayment review, and the provider engagement changes we've been making.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I just want to echo the Commissioner's opening comments. Chair Hoffman, it's wonderful to see you back here again today doing the people's work. And we hope you and your family have a continued recovery with our support and love. And again, it's just really wonderful to see you back at work here. So moving to the person-centered improvements here that we are trying to implement as a part of this process. We have an existing complex transitions team within DHS that has worked historically on movement from institutions like hospitals to community-based settings. And they usually or historically have been doing that work to move folks with complex conditions from hospitals, again, into a safe community setting. We are expanding the work of that team, the scope, and repurposing some of the staff there to be able to provide transitions between provider settings that are impacted by program integrity actions like a payment withhold. Or other provider disruptions as a result of payment integrity focused action. So that team can take referrals from the community, from providers, from the legislature, and can provide support in coordination with the lead agency like a county case manager to be able to support their transition safely and timely from one provider to another.
We know that counties, in many cases, are struggling with workload and can use the assist. So as the commissioner said, there's a proactive outreach both to providers, to lead agencies to let them know ahead of time when a payment withhold, for example, is going to happen, and then be there to offer support, often with regional support specialists as well. We can move to the next slide. So the major task I have today is to talk through the enhanced prepayment review process. I'll hit the highlights and, of course, glad to answer questions after. So this is really a process that shifts from, again, a tip-based or post-payment activity where there's a suspicion of a program integrity concern or fraud that involves investigation, and then a pay and chase approach where after payment is made, we try to recover through an investigation the payments that have gone out to the provider. This instead is in the claims processing that happens within DHS. We're providing claims to a vendor to review and run different tests or analytics against those claims and be able to flag different claims based on the concerns that might be raised. So they could be indicated as high levels of concern, medium, or low, again, depending on things like spikes in billing, irregularities or anomalies in billing, remarkable consistency that doesn't really seem clinically justified, billing that's outside of what would be clinically recommended for a person with those different conditions or needs, or within that service line. So what happens is that DHS receives the claims from the provider. They are sent then to the vendor for the prepayment review, the enhanced prepayment review process, sent back to us with those characterizations of medium, high, medium, or low risk. Then our policy and programs teams, depending again on the service line, will review those results and take a look at the concerns that the vendor has raised to us. It could be behavioral health. It could be a non-emergency medical transportation provider. It could be an ICS provider, an aging and disability services. They will take a look and review, and either as needed, review and approve the claim if they feel actually there isn't a concern here, and release it for payment timely. They might do additional follow-up if there is a concern, ask for different documentation, things of that nature from the provider. If they can resolve the concern, then release the claim for payment. Or if there's an enduring program integrity or fraud concern with the claim, then they would refer it to the Office of the Inspector General for investigation with respect to fraud. Moving on to the next slide, a little more detail about what's happened recently here in terms of the implementation. And I'll just echo the commissioner's comments here. Certainly, we have not implemented this with perfection. Our idea here was to really do this in a way that would not take a hammer approach, to recognize the chair's feedback about that, but to be more surgical and more specific in terms of how we're analyzing specific claims or providers. And certainly, we are open to communication and feedback, engagement about how to do that better, certainly with you all and also with providers, with the ultimate goal of making sure that people have access to the services they need. So again, a bit more about the prepayment review process. The vendor in step one there, as you can see, receives the claim from us. They will take usually about 5 days to review the claims, 5 days for DHS policy teams after we receive those characterizations back from the vendor to review the claims and decide either whether the claims need to be held for additional review and kind of inquiry with the provider or with the member directly in some cases to ensure that services were delivered. With respect to what's happened in December and January specifically, it was not our intention to freeze claims holistically. It was a pause or a suspension in the processing of claims to start the process. That was really what occurred, and we certainly will take feedback and have taken feedback from providers about how clear the communication was about that process, the intention and the timelines. Certainly open to more conversation about it, but really there were two things that had to occur then. Number one was sending the claims in that first batch to the vendor for analysis. There had to be some time for that to occur. They needed at least a few days to review the claims. And then also systems upgrades had to occur to be able to implement the process in our claims processing system, MMIS. And so that all took 2 weeks. We were able to release a good share of the claims in that first 2-week payment cycle on the 13th of January, and all claims since that were in suspension have been released as of yesterday, the 27th. So going forward, there will be a biweekly payment rhythm going forward, as providers have experienced in the past. It will just be payment from the prior payment cycle, the 2-week payment cycle, and that's what the payment will reflect. Next slide. So this just gives a little more texture to the process. And I realize this is small, you all have the graphics, but basically, just to give you an example, we can see here, for example, the 2-week payment cycle ended on the 8th, for example, in the first part of January. And what you can see then is 2 weeks later, we were able to do the process that I described, in which the vendor reviews the claims, the policy team then reviews the characterizations that come back to us. And then by the 27th, we were able to then release the payment through an electronics fund transfer 2 weeks later. So that's after the conclusion of the following 2-week period. Then we've completed that prepay review process, are able to characterize the claims and review them, and then release payment. I will note that in the future, because we are starting with a smaller number of tests that are applied to the claims, we will have more applied in future cycles of this. There may be some claims that are held for longer than 2 weeks, but it won't be the entirety of the provider's claims. It will be a share that are flagged for further review. So it may take an additional 2 weeks to review some share of the claims, depending on how many are flagged and the workload that we're having to process with regard to what comes back from the vendor. All right, a little bit more about the provider and advocate engagement. I think we're trying to be in increasing engagement with providers, with advocates, and with members themselves about experiences that they're having with respect to this new process. Again, this is really to ensure the integrity of what's being provided, both in terms of a standard of care, but also that resources are going to services that people need. So with respect to the first kind of box here, you can see that there's more direct system notification going out to providers to let them know what's going on. I think providers have said there needs to be more direct communication, iterative and in different formats. So in addition to that, we have email updates, there's a website, and provider resource representatives to answer questions directly. We've started to have additional roundtables scheduled so that providers can engage with us, ask questions, receive things like webinars or video information, and interact, again, more iteratively, since the request is, can we have more opportunities to engage and in different formats? So we're seeking to create more engagement in that regard. As the commissioner said too, we're creating an advisory panel with advocates and provider organizations to get kind of regular feedback, and we're seeking a bi-weekly rhythm in terms of the meeting of that group. Also understanding we need to improve the quality and timeliness of our communication. That providers need to be able to have access to communication before we release it, to review it and tell us, you know, this isn't very clear, it doesn't make sense, or different formats might make more sense. So we are committed to, again, with that advisory committee, allowing them to review the quality of communication and have more conversation about those with increased video and visual, as well as other opportunities for them to suggest ways that we ought to be engaging with providers and advocates and community and members. So I think with that, I will pause. And again, thank you for the opportunity. Glad to stand for questions.
Thank you for that. We'll get Jordan on the list. If people are starting to get on the list, Jordan, or Senator Rasmussen, put Zainab on there, Senator Abler, Gilman and Fatah beat you guys to it. So Glenn's got his hand up. If he's in. Where's Glenn? Is he in Glencoe or is he where's he at? 'Cause, you know, that depends. If you're in McLeod County, Glenn, you're not. You know, you have to get a specific visa to ask questions. So
I'll show you my best. Hey, nice to see you, John.
Thank you, Glenn. No, it's all
I have
good.
been praying for you and your family for full recovery.
I thank you for stopping and seeing me when I was in the ICU. Just as a simple follow-up, Assistant Commissioner Conley, was the CMS, did they say that you're out of compliance with your approved state plan?
So what they have said is that, well, depending on the difference.
Can I go just go?
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair.
We know the trigger mark here. If you're either out of compliance, you're not out of compliance. Did you get a letter that said you're out of compliance with your state approved plan?
Chair Hoffman, that's correct.
That is correct. All right. So then everything else is all incumbent on what your plan of action is on that. And so CMS then followed up with a letter that said you have to resubmit a plan, and did you resubmit that plan?
Mr. Chair, so we will resubmit the revised corrective action plan on the 30th. We did submit an initial draft on the 31st of December.
So I just wanted to make sure people are aware of the system that's in place with states, right? And there are things that CMS has to look at, and the continuity of care is written in their rules, and you know that. They also talk about the heightened scrutiny that's there, especially if things aren't being done, but not just arbitrarily. It has to be attached to the plan. So just wanted to get that in front of us, that if you're in a way of revising that state plan, then that's a different argument than it is. But it's also relevant, I think, that we know that disruption of services, specifically in people with disabilities. Again, I'm looking at CMS rules. Delays in provider payments and risk to continuity of care. They use that term multiple times in there. So, the actions are vulnerable to injunction if those things fall in place. But it should be focused in on what your non-compliant piece is on the estate plan. That's helpful for me to understand where it's coming from, because as somebody who has done compliance for Public Law 99-457, and I still do reviews for Health Resources Service Administration, those are really important facts that are played out. So with that, Mr. Connolly, I'm going to go to Senator Fata.
Thank you so much, Senator Hoffman. And I took some notes and questions off from the Safe Transitions Framework slide, if you want to go to that one. So for the payment withholds, it says ensure case managers have the resources they need to support necessary transitions. Do we have any estimates on like what percentage of transitions were successful, and do we have any figures around how many folks were displaced from their homes due to payment holds on residential sittings?
I think it goes to the commissioner on that one.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Hoffman, Senator Fata. The ones that we are tracking right now are for ICS services, and we are in close communication with the counties. We currently have 79 people that have moved from the ICS setting and 176 that are still.
Commissioner,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Apparently you guys unplugged the computer, the PowerPoint.
You want me to put it back?
Yeah, is that easily done? That's if folks then that are tracking.
Do you want to get to that slide?
Sure.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it dawned on me that,
Yeah.
there you go. Thank you. I want to make sure our friend in Glencoe sees that.
Okay. And the case managers then are working with each of the individuals to determine what their goals are, whether they want to stay in another ICS setting, whether, where they envision living so that they can help them reach that goal.
Senator Fata, there's some inconsistency with there were people that, because the stop payment was happening, we have somebody that was an ICS client that wasn't receiving services, and this person died.
They lost their life, yeah.
Right? You brought that to my attention. And there was some concerns about, okay, I stopped payment, but then where's the assurance or follow through on the continuity of service for an individual receiving services? Does that answer your question?
It partially does, but I have a couple more also.
Go ahead. You have the table. Keep going.
Thank you so much. How many payment withholds have been put in place? Do you have that figure?
For ICS services or all over?
Madam Commissioner.
That is a moving number. So in 2025, last year, we had more than 500 payment withholds in place.
And
Senator?
thank you, Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm still trying to get back into the groove of things. Do we have a breakdown of that 500, which programs, how many are by each program?
Madam Commissioner?
Chair, Senator. I'm sure we do. I don't have it on, the top of my head.
Senator Fata.
Thank you. And there's a way they can request also for good cause a lift on the payment withholds. Is that correct?
Commissioner?
Chair, Senator, correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Commissioner. Do we know how many have been requested and how many have been approved for that?
Commissioner?
Chair, Senator, yes, we do know that. I don't have the exact numbers, but it is, we do receive those requests, and we have lifted some if they meet the standard of proving the services were delivered. So we have lifted them in the past year, yes.
Senator Fata.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. What analysis is done, and how does it look like when in the decision-making process around how payment holds affect individuals' access to care and services? What does that analysis look like?
Commissioner. Chair, Senator, well, if it's a residential service, then that's the place where we are in particular providing this safe transitions, realizing that we are striking a balance between protecting care for people and protecting taxpayer dollars. So we're trying to strike the right balance. And we, like I said, I reach out personally to the county leaders to let them know so that they track this carefully. And then our staff within the program area that administers the service reaches out to the case managers, and we have a tracking form that tracks the individuals so that we are on top of making sure that people get the support and the changes that they need.
Senator?
Thank you. I tried to take notes quickly as you're giving responses. Thank you for that. Can you give me again that 179 and 76 number, what that was referring to? You said there was 170. Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner?
Chair, Senator Fata, that's just a point-in-time snapshot of how many individuals being served by an ICS were still in the ICS apartment or had been transitioned to a new setting of their choice.
Senator?
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. This is going to go to Representative Gilman. Representative Gilman, all the way from Cokato, Minnesota. Welcome to the Senate.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thanks everyone for being here today. I love the feedback here. That's good. So I'm going to just dig into a couple things. I just would like a little clarification because I don't know if your title has changed or not. I know you have been the temporary commissioner, and are you still the temporary commissioner for the last almost year now, right?
Commissioner?
Chair, Senator Gilman, yes. My title is temporary commissioner.
Okay, wonderful. I just wanted to know, I didn't know if something changed with that. So just clarifying that, as we're talking about DHS and all these claims, I'm getting lots of phone calls, lots of concerns of providers and those that are losing their continuum of care. And so I just want to go back to your role as temporary commissioner right now. I just want to know who's in charge because there's been a lot of confusion. Wondering if it's the governor's administration, are you in charge at DHS, and how did this all go about, and who's actually making the decisions? I've got folks that are, wondering if their businesses are going to go bankrupt, and they want to know who do they talk to. So I just want to know where are we at with that so I can point people to the right direction.
And and I'm glad you brought up the continuity of care thing. That seems to be the missing gap. There are people going without services. It was like, and then I saw, which I heard from members on this committee and people saying that the fingers are being pointed about, well, that's not your responsibility, Dawn. Mm-hmm. That's Megan's responsibility, or that's Al Quee's responsibility. Why didn't he fix it when he was governor, right? So I guess that's that whole transparency and that communication. I think that's where you're going with that, right? Okay.
So I'd like to know that.
All right, Commissioner, please.
Yes. So this is not uncommon to have a temporary commissioner or an acting commissioner when another commissioner steps down. That's why it is in state statute that a deputy must step up and serve as temporary commissioner or acting commissioner in a temporary capacity. And nothing changes with the way state government runs in that situation. So I am in charge of the operations of DHS, and DHS remains an agency in the governor's administration.
Representative Gilman.
Thank you so much, Chair. So going back to your comments about losing federal funding, $2 billion worth of federal funding, I just want to clarify something. DHS sent out a press release on January 23rd that states, "It is important for everyone to know that there have been no changes to funding at this time. Providers should continue to bill as usual. You will continue to be paid for eligible services you provide Medicaid enrollees under state law." And I just don't think it's appropriate to bring fear to those providers with those remarks. And I just also want to comment, you also met the requirement to appeal within the 5 days of notice so that we wouldn't lose any funding. So I'd like to know what your comments are on that.
Commissioner.
Chair and Representative Gilman, it is important for us with transparency to share what is happening in our federal-state partnership with administering the Medicaid program. We received a letter from CMS saying that they were going to withhold, and we appealed. CMS is actually not following its normal processes for that. Normally, a statement to withhold funds comes following an audit. No audit has been done. They came up with a number and told us that that's what they were withholding, and along with the statement that we were out of compliance. We disagree with that. We appealed, and we thought it was important to let providers know what was happening because all of this is being covered heavily in the news. And I believe it's important to continue to be transparent with that.
This is my follow-up question, if you
You're
don't mind,
good.
Chair.
You're
All right.
good.
So also, according to the contract that was signed with DHS, there's a report that's been due from Optum to DHS. Has the report been completed is one of my questions I have. And when will we, as this committee that's been working so hard to continue the care for folks most vulnerable in Minnesota, get to see the findings of that report? And have you seen it?
Commissioner.
Chair, Representative, that report draft has been delivered to us, and it is under review. And I will note that the report and the information from Optum absolutely will be shared. All of the public information, parts of it, will be shared. We are working with Optum to root out fraud. We are working with Optum to make our system stronger, and so we have to be careful not to release security data, audit data, and other things that might give fraudsters an advantage on our systems as we work to strengthen them. But as soon as the data classification is addressed and we have that ready for sharing publicly, we will provide that.
Thank you for that. And I think it's really important in this committee because we, in 2023, we defined credible allegations of fraud for payment withholds, right? Do you remember that? And so what Representative Gilman is getting to is really the criteria that Optum and DHS are using to flag claims. And when the DHS reviews those flagged claims, how does DHS define a potentially fraudulent claim? That's something I think as a follow-up, we're going to be here tomorrow. We'll be here but prior to the session, this is the stuff that, again, if there's going to be some course corrections that this committee needs to do, I think what Representative Gilman is bringing up is very important to us in that process. So I don't know if you want to answer that now or if that's something you want to save for later.
Chairman, I will share that what I learned from the data analysts that work on fighting fraud is that that is an evolving, continuous improvement effort to identify what things are are going to be meaningful in flagging a claim for potential fraud. So it is something that the experts are always looking at, and as fraud schemes are evolving, they are finding new ways to detect fraud in claims. So that's not something that's static.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Representative Gilman, you good?
Yeah, thank you. Just the last thing was timeline. Just, can you give us a date or a timeline when we'll get to hear that?
Commissioner?
Chairman,
The report findings.
The report findings.
Yes.
Yes, that will be soon. It will be within, I don't know, days, weeks. It's soon. I don't want to give you a day because they're looking at the data and making sure that we are not going to release any not public data.
So based on that, I think Representative New, Representative Schumacher, we should probably have a joint hearing when that report comes out. Don, if you're done, I'm going to go to Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll try to get through my questions quickly. Mr. Chair, for the Commissioner or one of her staff members, as a part of the prepayment review process, approximately how many claims have gone through that process?
Commissioner?
Chairman, Senator, what is it now? About 100,000 a cycle.
Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. So about 100,000 claims. Of those 100,000 claims, how many have been referred to DHS's OIG for investigation for fraud?
Commissioner?
Chairman, Senator, none yet. Right now, we have denied claims, but we have not found something that has indicated fraud on the prepayment end and referred it to OIG. That will change over time. This is a very new process. I would say that we are in the crawling phase. So we're crawling, then walking, then running. Prepayment review is not something that this state has done. This is a new effort with these 14 high-risk programs. We are working with the vendor, and each, as you heard Deputy Commissioner Connolly say, each cycle of claims, they're applying new tests to it. So we're not even up to our full tests. On the first run, we only ran one analytic or test on each of the 14 high-risk services. And we're doing that because it's really important for us to see what comes back with it and to check that and refine it and continue, like I said, to mature those analytics so that they're actually delivering what we're expecting, which is to catch claims that need further investigation.
Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. To me, that's surprising that we go through this major process and we review 100,000 claims. We pause payments for 13 programs out to providers, and there wasn't a single claim that got forwarded on to the Office of Inspector General for fraud. I guess my question, Mr. Chair, is, Commissioner, do you think of those 100,000 claims that have gone through prepayment review and found not to be fraudulent, do you think are there fraudulent claims in there, or do you think that they're all clean and would meet the letter of the law?
Commissioner?
Chairman, Senator, I think first of all, I understand why you are surprised that none were forwarded to the OIG, and I will just say we are in the beginning, we are in the infancy of implementing it. So I expect that we will have many claims that will be flagged and go over to the OIG as we move from crawling to walking to running. So we are in the infancy, first of all. Second of all, we denied payments to more than 70 claims out of the 100. So we have that. And then, is this system perfect and catching every single potentially fraudulent item that's in those 100,000 claims, no system is going to do that. But I have no doubt that as the system matures, we are going to be catching fraud on the front end, and we're already denying payments where we shouldn't have been paying them. So we've started down the road, and it will get better.
I think, Senator, there was a report that I just saw that, based on that, not fraudulent claims, but some that, got flagged. It's 6% seems to be the national standard, and based on what we just saw, it's like Minnesota was at 2% or something like that. It was just so, this is all wrapping in because I do want us to get then to continuity of care, and I'm hearing ICS providers that specifically when somebody receives a stop payment, the county case manager can't find a place to move, and I'm hearing that people are being evicted to the street. I mean, and you're hearing the same thing. So anyway, I didn't want to add to your piece, but follow up to what the commissioner's saying, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. And I guess I'll just offer a comment, which is I'm concerned that we've gone through this process, reviewed 100,000 claims, and haven't caught any fraud. I would submit, Mr. Chair, my estimation is that unfortunately within those 100,000 claims, I think there probably is fraud. We're just not yet catching it, yet we're having disruptions for service providers that we're hearing about. We'll hear more about that tomorrow. So I worry that we're still in that spot where DHS can't tell a good provider from a fraudulent one, and this prepayment review process hasn't yielded actionable cases that we can go to protect Minnesota taxpayers. And I guess, Mr. Chair, if you'll humor me, Commissioner, your predecessor was here about a year ago, and we were talking about human services fraud. And one of the questions I asked Mr. Chair and Commissioner was, why does Minnesota have a fraud problem? And I guess, Commissioner, I'd ask you that same question. Why does Minnesota have a human services fraud problem at this scale?
Commissioner.
Chair, Senator, I don't think Minnesota has a problem any different than any other state in the nation. People, if you have humans, you have fraud. Fraud is something that is done because there's the opportunity to commit fraud. We have seen evolving fraud schemes here in Minnesota, and since I stepped into this role, we have been doing more than I have heard any other state doing to fight fraud. We are looking for it, we are using new tools to look for it, and we're unafraid to look for it, and we're taking action when we find it. When we spoke with CMS, I gave them the same answer and asked them what other states were doing, and they did not have other states that were doing more than we are doing here. They did not have that at their fingertips.
Senator Rasmussen, you and I had this conversation early on, and I remember that, and we talked about fraud is the context, not the question, right? I mean, it's like, all right, so why are we doing what we're doing now? And this is the how. And I think you're getting to something on, there's 100,000, is there something missing within that system's approach to it? And yet at the same time, the response has been to all of a sudden forget about the most vulnerable people that are receiving services. I'm hearing you on that. So go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. And I think we're living in two different worlds, unfortunately, Mr. Chair, here, where I think what Minnesotans are seeing, what I'm hearing from them, is that they're outraged at the level of human services fraud in our state. Minnesotans are generous people. They expect their dollars to go to people who need it to provide services for the most vulnerable. That's what this committee cares about. Yet we're hearing the same answer today that we heard a year ago from DHS leadership, which is that Minnesota doesn't have a fraud problem. In fact, we heard right now that Minnesota is exceptionally good at going after fraud, and that we're doing so much more than other states. And I just don't think Minnesotans believe that, Mr. Chair. I don't think that they would have confidence in that answer. And in order for us to fix this problem, we have to recognize that we have a problem. And unfortunately, I don't think everyone in this room is on the same page that we do have a fraud problem that really needs to be addressed. Mr. Chair, I just have one question, and we can get into this, as we get into session, but I think I can speak for members of this committee that we're pretty shocked by the recent Office of the Legislative Auditor report that talked about multiple manager-level employees falsifying documents in response to an audit. And one of the things that I get asked about in terms of the culture of DHS is there accountability? Is something going to change? Is the culture going to improve? And so, Mr. Chair, my question for the commissioner has anyone been dismissed over those OLA findings? Has there been any accountability since that report's come out?
Commissioner.
Chairman, Senator, I'd like to go back to your first comment. I am absolutely not denying fraud, so please don't misstate what I say. What I said is fraud exists because humans exist. And Minnesota is looking for fraud and rooting it out, and I don't see other states doing as much as we're doing. I did not deny that there is fraud in human services, and we are doing more. That's what I said, first of all. Second of all, as with respect to the OLA report, I was absolutely floored to hear what Legislative Auditor Randall said. I actually heard that during the exit conference and had a call with her that evening to understand what she knew, what she had seen, and to make sure that we could launch a full investigation into that. I had my chief compliance officer on the call with me, and we have an investigation underway. I absolutely will be taking action against any employee that falsified documents. Legislative Auditor Randall knows that I am willing to provide her with the full details of our investigation, any records she wants to see, because I understand that people will question whether DHS would accurately investigate itself. So there will be oversight into that through Legislative Auditor Randall.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. No one disputes that fraud, waste, and abuse must be addressed, but this hearing examines, and I want to keep us focused, Jordan, we talked about this earlier, is whether the response from the department was proportional, properly sequenced, and implemented without destabilizing care. You had brought that up too. So I want to get us back into what we're pieces here. That's all needs to be coming out. We will have, I think we're going to be able to meet 30 times. That's about it. That's why I think we should be bicameral, bipartisan in this whole conversation going forward. So can I move on to Senator Abler? Is it Abler? Abler, or you have a follow-up to that? No? You got a follow-up? You're good? All right. Senator Abler.
I thought I was after my good friend here. And Senator Hoffman, 7 months is yesterday, and it's a lifetime. And happy to be here with you. Didn't think I'd go there. Anyway, I've been really angry about this, just to tell you. Trying to find people to talk to. This topic is so complex. It's so nice to be in a room who actually understands it. And the nuance and some press calls, and they're like, oh, it's fraud. Like, yeah, it's something about, I don't know. And I'm just really happy to finally get to move this forward and have it be in the light of day. As mentioned, the legislative auditor, there's different stories about hearings in 2017 and 2018, Senator Hoffman. We were in this room, and I had a gavel at that time, and we were looking into it. And we did what we could do and started it. And anyway, so that was kind of interesting just to think about it. And I just also want to actually, I could echo and ditto everything that people said, and I thought Senator Hoffman's opening statement was good, and then Schumacher did amazing, and Noor, and everybody else has said thoughtful things, but I hope in the middle of all this that people don't think that the people at the table and the people sitting behind are disinterested in what this is. You've all been dealt a very difficult hand. And Commissioner Gandhi, I saw you sit at a hearing taking full responsibility. Well, it's your job to sit there and the buck stops here. And who was it that said that? Harry Truman or somebody? But it isn't all on you, and you're trying to pick up the pieces. I know the deep passion that so many of the people that work at the department have for the citizens and the clients that they serve, but we're in a mess. And the dialogue is useful. I just want to make sure you understand that I appreciate the humanity that you represent as people and the humanity you see in our 1.5 million clients and friends that are around the state. But with that just being said, I warned you, a bunch of you, that you're going to catch some dolphins in the tuna net. Remember Chicken of the Sea? This can be paid for. Maybe I can get a little kickback. And so in our haste, and this was decidedly a hasty process without any outside input, without any of the providers, without any of us, without any of the people that hang around, that was done, we got to do something. And then you all did. I don't even know if you had the decision in it, Commissioner. I don't even know that it was your decision. But somebody decided we're going to do this, and then you're stuck with having to implement it in a hasty way. It caused, I think, more disruption than you were hoping for. I'm not even asking you to comment. I'm just trying to just appreciate the difficulty. And ironically, that the money didn't come like on New Year's Eve, and there's no one even to ask. Nobody knew that they weren't going to get the money. They thought they were going to get the 1% or 2% or 6% dings on their bills. And so they wound up on literally New Year's Eve, unable to pay their staff. And And then the way life goes, most people had 2 cycles of not getting any money. And we had a nice conversation, and you helped diffuse some of my, just intensity. But as we go forward, we're going to have to track, and I think you have to track about the companies that are not going to be able to serve, and how many people were not served in the interim time there, and how many companies are thinking about closing even yet. And this suddenly just initiating a 2-week delay, I don't know if your department could handle a 2-week delay in having money to pay your staff. And you're a big department. You have billions of dollars. You can kind of slide it around somehow. These people, a legitimate Medicaid provider, has no money. They're driving a 2003 Volvo, not a 2025 Range Rover, which, by the way, is to the OIG people, that'd be a good test to do. What are you driving? And they wake up, they stay up all night, they work 60 hours a week or more to serve the people in their charge. And this is all landed on them really heavy. And I am trying to be polite about this, but I don't know if in the world, in the Anderson building, that translates up to the world that they have on Lake Street or in St. Paul or somewhere. So just to challenge you in thinking how these go forward. And the true angst that I've heard from just a good number of people. And it just kind of grieves me. So I even hope that this will work. My take on it, after having had all those hearings, is that people committing fraud are really smart. I mean, they're corrupt and evil. But if I was going to commit fraud to you, I would make a point to fill out my papers. And since they have no clients, they have a lot of time. And they can bring in people, and they go from one place to the next, and they perfect it. And I will predict that some of the people that are fraudulent are going to slip through your tuna net. And so we need site visits. We need bona fide audits. I think we've given you a ton of money to the OIG, and it just seems like it's not even helped. So I'm not going to go on that long, Mr. Chair, but I just have 2 things. I don't know how the department had the right to institute a 2-week delay. Oh, by the way, that's now permanent. And so you don't have to even answer that, but that's my homework question. How do you think you can do that? Did you call up at least the 3 chairs, my 3 chairs? Did you call them up and say, hey, what do you think? We're going to do a 2-week delay. Can the 3 of you sign off? I don't think you did. And I don't know that the providers had a working group. Hey, how do you think about that? Anyway, so I guess this is going to be a soliloquy. My last thing is the safe transitions period here. I'm glad you're having one. But this credible allegation of fraud that's been instituted, we have talked about multiple times. And all you need is a credible allegation of fraud. And then I chatted with some of your staff, like, oh, no, it's not just that. Like, there's a meeting, they look at that, and then the next people go, yeah, that's right. And then, oh yeah, sure, that's credible. Based on what? Based on, sometimes I believe that error is treated like fraud. And you said it wasn't, but I believe it is. And because the provider never gets to defend themselves and say why they happen to have that happen to them. There are some NEMT providers I know specifically that I don't think are corrupt. They had to shut down 3,000 rides a month because they had a credible allegation. And so fine, now 3,000 people aren't getting dialysis. And so I'm just telling you, that is not a good way. Let's find the fraud people, but we have to have due process. One of my biggest concerns of what's going on in the street is there's no due process for so many people. I mean, and that's a heavy metaphor for this, but in terms of a company where they put their life and their future and they've got hundreds of clients to suddenly have no money waiting for, and so my homework question for you, and you don't have to respond to any of this right now. So what is the average time between a credible allegation of fraud and then the adjudication? And the testimony is never in some cases. And so they go out of business like, oh, that was that. And I don't think you want to drive good providers away. So that's my thoughts, and I know there's limited time, but Mr. Chair, I'm going to stop there, and I'm happy to take this all offline or let you come and describe it as a thoughtful presentation. So.
It is the hope,
Thank you, Commissioner.
Senator, it is the hope after, what does this committee collectively need to do in order to address what you just did going back to 2018? So thank you for those thoughts.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, if they want to answer briefly, but I don't think we have time to get into that today.
No,
so,
I mean,
but I wanted to raise it. So
you want to raise it, the members, you want them to answer the issues that Senator Abler was raising, or let him take it offline? Lead, anyone? Are you guys okay if we go later? I mean, you okay on time?
Yes.
Yes? God love Glenn.
I'm always last.
How many minutes do you need, Glenn?
I'll let you know as I start talking.
See, I knew that he's gonna hold me. I love that. So go ahead, Commissioner.
Chair, Senator Abler, thank you for that. Just quickly, a couple things. One, yes, the committee and the legislature gives us funding for staffing. I will note that our amount of funding that we have for both staff and IT systems is between 2% and 3%. That's where it fluctuates. So for $20 billion, we have 2 to 3% that goes to staffing and all of our IT needs. Second of all, with the 2-week delay in state statute and with Medicare rules, we have 30 days to pay. So even within the 2 weeks, it is, we are falling within our statutory obligations. I fully recognize that the change in practice is what caught people off guard. And then I asked James to come up here so that he could speak to your program integrity questions, but Deputy Commissioner Connolly wants to.
I was just going to add one thing in addition. Chair, Senator.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Director Connolly. Just got demoted. Kidding, go ahead.
Chair, Senator, I just wanted to add before James spoke, Inspector General Clark speaks, that we agree with you about the site visit piece, and a part of the corrective action plan that we will submit to CMS is doing a revalidation site visit of all the providers. So we will be going on site, reviewing the paperwork. We 100% agree with you. So just wanted to note that.
And let me just double back on that 2-week piece. Yes,
Yeah.
but that's the wrong answer. We follow state law, right? That's like CMS is going to say to you, well, we're following the rules of CMS, but that's the wrong answer because they cannot do it in a retaliation mode, right? What I'm saying is that 2-week piece, yes, you're following 30 days, but folks were not aware of that. They were not prepared for that. And because of that, and you're going to see the questions that come out from the committee here, and even from me, especially on the ICS provider side, right? there are people that do not have a place to live right now. There are people that are not receiving services right now. There are people that are like homeless right now. And that's what bothers me the most, Commissioner. So I'm sorry I'm getting a little upwards. I'm starting to hit the wall here, which is something happens when you got trauma, right? And so those are the things that we really need to focus on. What's next on that? I do not need to hear from Mr. Clark at all because of the time limit that we have. Senator Abler, are you okay? Do you want to hear from Mr. Clark or not? All right, Mr. Clark, go ahead.
Thank you.
And for the record, please state your name.
I'm James Clark. I'm the Inspector General at the Department of Human Services. I started this past March, so coming up close on a year. Senator Abler, to answer your question and to follow up on what Chair Hoffman said, we follow state law in every instance.
Can you get him closer, John, to the mic? Mr. Director, Assistant Commissioner Conley, can you get him closer to the mic?
So the department follows state law in every instance when we implement a payment withhold. So that's kind of the threshold answer. I'll tell you our internal working process for implementing payment withholds, they go through investigator review, supervisor review, manager review, and legal review. We feel confident about the decisions we're taking when we're implementing payment withholds. In terms of timing, we refer providers to the Attorney General's office when there's a credible allegation of fraud. We are making that referral. We're providing that information the very next day after we implement payment withholds. Payment withholds in terms of timing, it varies, right? But they remain in place, right, while we think we have credible allegations of fraud and while criminal or our own internal administrative investigations play out.
Mr. Chair.
Senator.
Can I borrow some of the smoke coming out of your ears? We need to talk offline. We need more discussion about this. That is like the least satisfactory answer you could give me. CMS is going to tell you the same thing. Well, we have the right to review these things, you know, and we're going to withhold $2 billion or $9 billion or $1 zillion, and now you're going to have to crash the whole program, which none of us want, by the way.
And to that point, Senator Abler, this committee doesn't operate like that, hasn't operated like that. We sat in our conference committee last year, and the commissioner even said, wow, I wish other conference committees worked this so well together. We disagreed on many points, but at the end of the day, there was no excuses. We had to do like Joe had said, Chair Schumacher had said, this was hard decisions that we had to make, and we made these decisions. So,
Mr. Chair,
yes,
and just
Senator,
the last
sorry.
thing. So what I didn't hear in your comment was due process. And there's a due process piece missing. Oh, we're afraid to lose Mr. Fraudsters. I'm going to tell you, a lot of the people that you were investigating with credible allegations of fraud don't even know what they did wrong. And maybe they need to be trained. They can't find, they can't find staff to do stuff. They have a new billing person. Well, it's fraudulent. Like you used the wrong code. You're 15 minutes over. That's a credible allegation. So I'm just telling you, welcome to the job. And thanks for doing it. Is he temporary or is he a permanent? Okay. Permanent. There you go.
Senator
Thanks
Abler,
for taking the work. It's really important.
It's a tough job.
I think, Senator Abler, didn't we identify in statute what credible? Didn't we have a credible?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just want to get into the due process.
Credible
which I don't think is there
allegation.
yet. So we'll work on that, and I respect what you're trying to do. So
Thank you,
I'm done,
Senator.
Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Senator, we're going to go to Senator Gruenhagen, and then Senator Mohammed, and then Senator Utke. The good, the bad, and the Utke. Where did he go? So, Senator Gruenhagen, turn your microphone on. We want to hear your voice.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah. I just got a couple questions. I'll try to keep it brief because I know we're running out of time. But, you know, I have talked to some of the House fraud members over there. And according to them, they've talked to some whistleblowers in DHS who had tried to alert the Walz administration and DHS leadership about fraud. And there was even a petition reportedly where there were over 450 DHS workers signed a petition that they were being persecuted or chided for reporting fraud. So these are our frontline workers. They're the ones that can catch fraud quicker than anybody else. We talked about the human element. And yet it seems like the Walz administration, according to published reports, and DHS has persecuted these people and even threatened them. In fact, I have one report from a House member who has talked with some of the whistleblowers that they are afraid for their family and themselves, and they refuse to come forward publicly on that. So is this, my question for the commissioner, is this being addressed? And why was this allowed when we had credible workers writing DHS reporting that there was a fraud problem, and then nothing was done except they were actually persecuted? Are you trying to get to the bottom of this? And are people going to be fired who persecuted these workers?
So,
Commissioner.
thank you, thanks. Hey, Glenn, Senator, I don't think anybody's disputing that the fraud, again, nobody's disputing fraud, waste, and abuse must be addressed. Can you help bring us back to our purpose, Glenn?
My question is, why weren't the employees in DHS listened to when they tried to report that there was a problem with fraud?
Oh,
I would like the commissioner to respond to that.
Okay. Commissioner, do you want to answer that question? If I don't know what it has to deal with proportionality, Glenn, or sequenced or implementation.
But it has a lot
What
to
you
do
say,
with fraud. We could have caught this a lot earlier if we'd listened to the employees and they weren't being persecuted.
Fair enough, Glenn. Commissioner, do you have an answer to that?
Thank you, Chairman and Senator. Employees are absolutely our frontline defense. I think DHS has an employee engagement survey that shows that more than, I think it's around 75% of employees know how to report for fraud and feel comfortable reporting fraud internally. Now, that said, I know that there are employees that have reported things that felt unheard. It is not acceptable if there is a manager, if there is a supervisor, if there is somebody in leadership that is either ignoring reports or retaliating. They are absolutely subject to an investigation and discipline up to and including termination. One of the important things is that we have to make sure that there's multiple avenues for people to report fraud, and so I know that reporting fraud can be scary, and I also encourage people to report fraud to the Office of the Legislative Auditor or also the BCA that also has whistleblower protections.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, one follow-up comment.
Glenn,
Yep.
I know you're excited, you're in Glencoe, but you still have to follow the rules of our committee, right? Can you recognize either me or if you don't, just say Mr. Chair and one of us will say yes.
Well, I was going to say Mr. Chair right away, but I just have one follow-up comment. Somebody
You got it. Go ahead,
Okay.
Senator.
My comment is simply this, and it's my perspective. After talking to some of the House fraud members and the reactions of the whistleblowers and their actions, it seems like the Walz administration was giving out this money willy-nilly in fraud, and they didn't want to report it, and that they were actually buying votes with state and federal tax dollars, and that's a crime in my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Senator Mohammed, I think, and then, you know what, I don't like this. Senator Utke is like the last one on the list. How, you get the final say in it every time, Paul. I don't know how you do that, but we're going to go Senator Mohammed and then Senator Utke. And Glenn, thank you for joining us. Go ahead, Senator.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions for you, Commissioner, and it follows a question that somebody asked earlier, which was, I think you said there was something upwards of like 170 individuals who are currently in ICS settings who those providers' payments are on withhold, correct? Mr. Chair?
Go ahead,
Commissioner.
Chair, Senator. Yes, they've either been notified that a payment withhold will be implemented or they're on current payment withhold. I'm not sure where in each of the 21 they are in the safe transitions period.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
I'll just follow. And for those individuals, are they still receiving services from those providers?
Commissioner.
Chair, Senator, yes, they are, we have each of them sort of where they are. So those that are still in ICS, I hope they are receiving services, because this is one of the things that we worry about greatly. With these settings, this was not done lightly. We were receiving reports, numerous reports from families, from case managers and recipients themselves that they were not receiving services.
Senator Mohammed.
Out of the 179 individuals, how many of those families or individuals do you believe were not receiving services prior to this withhold?
Commissioner.
Chair, Senator, I don't have the numbers of how many people our Inspector General spoke with in each instance, but they were for each provider, it was not done lightly. There were multiple recipients and multiple reports of neglect and services not being delivered. Now, some of the residents in those facilities might say that they were getting the level of service that they were approved for, but we had widespread people not getting the services that we were paying for.
Thank you.
Senator Mohammed.
Inspector, do you have a number?
I don't have the exact number of how many ICS recipients we've talked to. I'm told that the Office of Inspector General has done in the past year over 350 interviews with recipients. That's a big part of our investigations. I will just reiterate what the commissioner has said. With ICS settings, we have seen time after time recipients calling us, case managers calling us, family members calling us, saying that they are in these apartment complexes. They're getting housing, but they are not getting any services. Those are the reports that we are responding to. So I don't know the exact number, but I was just reviewing an investigative memorandum today for an ICS provider we suspended payments to. We received 2 separate MARC reports. We did 3 recipient interviews. We reviewed records, all indicating that services were not being provided for these people.
Senator?
I got a few more if that's okay.
Yeah, you're okay on time. I just thank you for.
So to what Senator Abler said earlier, which is often what we hear from providers, is that there is no due process within the system. And I think that's something you all are working through, whatever that looks like, which is something that there needs to be clarity around. For these 175 individuals, do you have a backup plan for them in the case those providers say, we're not providing services, we're out? Does Hennepin Health have 179 beds for them?
Commissioner or Senator, Assistant Commissioner Conley.
Chair Hoffman, Senator Mohammed. So in that case, we would work proactively, again, through our Aging and Disability Services team with the county. If a case manager is responsible, in the case of ICS, that would be the situation, to work with the member to have a person-centered plan for transition to another provider if that provider chooses not to continue to provide services. And again, if there's an issue with county capacity or executing that, our team stands ready to assist.
Senator?
Do you have a plan for them today if all of those providers walk away?
Assistant Commissioner Conley.
Chair Hoffman, Senator Mohammed. So yes, in essence, the Aging and Disability Services team has a complex transitions team, and if there's a situation in which a provider stops offering services to them and they need to be transitioned, again, our team would work with the county or the lead agency to provide a safe transition. So that is what we are standing ready to do, and of course, working with the lead agencies to support people through that.
Senator?
And then I wanted to go back to the bold steps to protect people, this slide. When you eliminated the HSS program, which there have been credible fraud allegations, and people who have been convicted for those fraud crimes, what happened to the individuals who were? Was the program sort of pointless? Was there nobody who was using the program that was legible, or what happened to the individuals when you eliminated the program that were receiving services?
Assistant
or the
Commissioner
housing?
Conley or Commissioner Shireen Gandhi?
Chair Hoffman, Senator Mohammed. So I think that's an important question. And no, the program or the benefit was not pointless. It was created to provide people support with respect to transitions or to sustain their housing situations in support of their broad health and wellness. And that was the aim of the program. However, and we understand that there were providers among the network that were providing services, that were legitimate, hardworking providers supporting people in those ways. The problem that we confronted was that the breadth and depth of the fraud that we discovered was so great that there was a decision to move forward in partnership with CMS to end the benefit, because the Inspector General's team, as well as law enforcement at the state and federal level, both were overwhelmed by being able to respond to, investigate, and prosecute the fraud that we were finding. So that's what led to the end of the program.
And housing support is still.
So, Senator, you bring up that's a great point that comes up here for us, because we, on the special session, bicameral, bipartisan, took seriousness about what was happening with that program, and we had fixes for it. It was just to end it like that without any conversations with the folks in this table that put it together that's really disappointing.
I agree, Mr. Chair. So I guess what happened to those individuals who were with providers that were credible, that were getting housed, that were receiving those services? What happened to the clients and individuals who were benefiting from these programs?
Assistant Commissioner Conley.
Chair Hoffman, Senator Mohammed. So again, a really important question. We still have the housing support benefit, which is a state-only funded service that is available to support them. There is overlap, not perfect overlap, between the service array that was available through the Housing Stabilization Services benefit through Medicaid that ended and the state-only benefit or service. So we are certainly trying to make sure that folks are able to access the services they need, whether it be through the housing support program or a range of other Medicaid benefits that could help them given their array of needs.
Senator?
And I think early or late October, we all received that infamous press release from the governor's office that said that they were going to stop the payments for all of these 14 programs. DHS stepped in and said, no, we're doing a prepayment review for a lot of these programs. On, I believe, Christmas Eve, a lot of the providers sort of were told that they weren't going to be paid. I believe half of those are paid as of January 13th. For the providers that haven't gotten their payment, you said, Commissioner, that it isn't because that they were flagged for fraud. It's that they're going through the process. Can you sort of walk through what that process looks like? I asked this because a lot of these providers don't have money sitting around to pay their staff or to help provide services for these individuals. What is the plan?
Assistant Commissioner, Commissioner.
Chair, Senator, those providers have been paid. So everybody has been paid that has submitted claims, and we are now on the 2-week cycle that Deputy Commissioner Connolly walked through earlier in the presentation.
Okay, so every single person was paid that submitted, and
that wasn't denied, right. All of the claims that were submitted that were not denied were paid.
As of yesterday, the 40%?
Correct.
Got it. My other question, I believe, followed what Senator Rasmussen said earlier, which was, maybe it wasn't, somebody said it. And it's for you, Commissioner. Is there a noticeable difference between who is submitting claims before the prepayment review process and who did it after it was announced?
Commissioner.
Chair, Senator, it's too early to tell, but we are collecting data and information like I shared with Senator Rasmussen and the committee. We are in the very early stages of prepayment review, and so we need to give it time to work. We have to move from our crawling phase to our walking phase to our running phase. Then we'll have better information.
I'm almost done, Mr. Chair. This, I think, is like something I've been saying since last session, which is often these providers actually do need legitimate trainings. And when we've had bills, DHS will say we need more money. What additional resources and standardized trainings will DHS provide to help providers who meet the prepayment review requirements?
Commissioner. Assistant Commissioner.
Chair Hoffman, Senator Mohammed, another really good question. So as a part of the corrective action plan, we agree with you. Providers do need training on the process. We're continuing to engage with providers, advocates, members about how to make the process clear, to provide the right technical assistance and training to ensure that providers know how to be successful in the new process, what the timelines are, and the different rhythms with respect to payment. So that is definitely a part of what we have endeavored to do in partnership with the providers. The other thing is that CMS has required or asked for, and we have included in our second draft of our corrective action plan that we'll submit on Friday, a provider training plan. So that was something they called out in their feedback to us in their January 6th letter. And so there will be a provider training plan as a part of that, such that providers understand, different elements of program integrity. The Steps for Success program is the chassis for that. It exists, for example, for PCA. And so we're looking to build upon that to provide more resources to providers.
That's helpful follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Senator.
And this has to do with Optum, which has been a subject since the implementation of working with them. What oversight structure and quality controls ensure Optum's analytics are accurate and not generating excessive red flags on certain communities?
Senator, Commissioner, or Assistant Commissioner.
Chair Hoffman, Senator Mohammed, I think that's another really important question. And part of what we're seeking to do, of course, is review what's flagged in every single prepayment review cycle. So in the 2-week cycles, I think to Senator Rasmussen's question about, why haven't we sent anything to the Office of the Inspector General yet? I think as patterns become apparent to us, there will be more flags as different trends become clear. And I think in that iterative and learning process, we will look at what analytics or tests are being applied that are useful and others that don't make sense, and then look at the profiles of the providers and claims that do get flagged and pay attention to those patterns as well. So I think we're going to learn a lot as we go through the cycles and pay attention to that. In terms of oversight, certainly I think our finance folks and our data analytics folks, we do have multiple data analytics teams in the department, will want access to the data so they can replicate the analyses and look for themselves at what's being kind of calculated by the vendor.
Mr. Chair, I ask this because I think it's an important question for communities,
yes.
Particularly for certain communities who've lived in this country post 9/11, who have to go through the airport and know that their name is always flagged. I am worried that the AI systems you guys are using will flag certain names because what you put in that system is what it learns. So I really hope that you have actual humans checking in and making sure that we're not flagging a certain community.
Data privacy stuff, that's a great conversation that has been up for a round. So thank you. Can we go to Senator Utke then?
You're good to go.
You're awesome. Senator Utke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Land this plane?
Land this plane. I think one of the things we're hoping is that we have an idea of where we're going this session and what needs to be fixed, Senator Utke, and I guess that's always a question we've always had on the table. So yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just couldn't let it drop earlier when you kind of mentioned we might have 30 hearings. I was wondering how many we're going to have a week, but now don't have to go and answer that because that sounded like we only got about 6 weeks to get those hearings in. That means we're going to be here day and night.
8.
But anyhow,
8.
Mr. Chair, I do have a couple quick things, but I do want to get a little clarity from the commissioner. I think the way I heard it, that you understand that reporting fraud could be scary. Why would that be such within the Department of Human Services?
Commissioner.
Senator, or Chair Hoffman, Senator Utke, that's a general statement and a generally known situation in compliance. So when somebody reports something that's going wrong within an organization or something they're concerned about, it's natural to feel that that something's going to change in your employment. And so it is important for organizations to do everything that they can to protect people that raise concerns. That's why we have whistleblower laws. That's why organizations, DHS included, work to improve the culture for reporting. And so staff feel comfortable speaking up.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. Now I've got 3 little things. I'm going to bunch them all together. We'll put answers to them quickly as you can. But with some of the slides that we were showing when Inspector General Mr. Clark was brought on board in the first quarter, it was mentioned to, object is to prosecute some of these. So my question when we get to that would be, can you just give us a little high level how the success that you've had, how many have been prosecuted in the time that you've been on the job or in charge of the office? The second thing, and that showed up in one of the slides here where it talks about submitting claims, and it says submitting claims at any time, bill early, bill often. That seems to be kind of something. If you're a provider, could you bill daily if you wanted to? I know that it's every 2 weeks. To me, I'm kind of just, if you could give us just a little bit of oversight on how that system works, because if you were to bill every day, does that complicate it more for you than if it comes in organized by the week or every 2 weeks? It just seems kind of strange with the bill early, bill often type comment. And then the last was, it was mentioned in the opening testimony that disenrolled thousands of inactive providers in this group that we're looking at here, but we know that the Department of Human Services covers a lot of ground. Are you digging into all of the services that you offer to disenroll all those? Because that seems to be a huge step in the fraud check of trying to get this thing righted, because if we've got all of these inactive providers, who's still getting paid that isn't even doing anything? And I think, so this is a good first step, but it looks like it's just barely opening the door and you got a long ways to go. But if just a couple quick little answers on those first couple questions would be great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You know, take note, people, this is how it should be done. Senator Etke just lines that thing up and says, all right, let's get to the answer on these. So, Commissioner, any update for the senator?
Thank you.
Chairman Senator, I'd like to just quickly say that, yes, we are disenrolling providers across the entire Medicaid program that are inactive. So that is in process, and we've completed it for a large number, and I think it's going to be completed within weeks. So that is, and then, Chair, I'd like to have Inspector General speak to the OIG question.
Inspector General.
Thank you, Chair and Senator Utke. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Correct.
Okay. So I don't, at this time, have the number of prosecutions that were based on referrals while I've been at the Office of Inspector General. So I don't have exact numbers, but I would say that oftentimes the cases that you're seeing in the news, right, originated as payment suspensions at the DHS Office of Inspector General and referrals to law enforcement. I would say I anticipate and welcome that there will be additional prosecutions, right, based on our criminal referrals. One of my goals in coming over here to DHS from the Attorney General's office is to strengthen our relationships with law enforcement. To that end, I'm meeting weekly with the BCA superintendent and the head of the AG's Medicaid Fraud Prosecutions Unit. We're having those meetings on a weekly basis to discuss specific cases and fraud trends and ways we can collaborate.
And the dashboard.
Senator Utke, was that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the answer there. Just a little clarification from your office. Are you able to prosecute and carry these things to finality, or do you have to go through the Attorney General's office?
Yeah, so thank you. And just to clarify, yeah, so
Excuse me. You
Mr.
recognize
Chair.
me, then you go to him. You wait for me. That's how it works here. I thought you're a lawyer.
This is my first time from this.
I don't care.
Mr.
Then bring
Chair.
donuts next time.
Mr. Chair, Senator Utke, did I do that correctly?
You did that correctly.
Okay. Apologies. Now I forgot what the question was.
And we should get
Mr. Chair, being you disrupted him, I will just add that it was about the prosecution and using the Attorney General.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm going to practice. Mr. Chair, Senator Utke.
Boom.
Thank you for the question. So just to clarify, right, the Department of Human Services is not a prosecutorial agency. We're a state administrative agency. We cannot prosecute anybody. So what we can do is we can suspend payments when we suspect fraud, which is a crime, and we refer suspected crimes to law enforcement agencies such as the BCA, such as the Attorney General's Office, such as our federal law enforcement partners, the FBI, HHS, OIG, and the U.S. Attorney's Office, and it would be their responsibility to prosecute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Ecke, thank you. We're going to go to Representative Schumacher. You know what? This turned into a great conversation, a needed, deeply needed conversation. I'm sorry that it took so long. I'm not going to do my closing statement. As soon as Representative Schumacher is done, then we will let you know. Tomorrow we're going to hear from providers, consumers, and families. And so we will hopefully at the end of the day have an idea of what needs to happen, and I did set some other dates aside if we need to keep going. So, Representative Schumacher, take us home.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I guess I have two questions. The first one relates back to the slide with the calendar for the payment and claim cutoff calendars. As we looked at that, and we had a situation at the end of last year where the cutoff was changed at an unknown time, and it struck me, Commissioner Gandhi, when you said that the change in practice is what caught people off guard, but from what I've been hearing from providers throughout the state is when the department decides to change the date and does very little to get outreach to the providers about the change of date for the cutoff for payments, that is really what is causing problems. When 40% of the payments weren't filed because a date was changed because of a holiday and the notice was lacking. I know as a legislator, I was told by the department that this had happened on the 7th of January, but the providers that I talked to had no indication that this was coming, no real ability to prepare for that, and I think it's evident when 40% didn't file in that time. And so what kind of decision-making process went into that? What are there potential changes that can be made to this calendar that we have in front of us here that we should let providers know about ahead of time so that they can prepare? Who makes that decision? Why was that decision ultimately made? And why wasn't there better notice given to providers for that?
Ditto across the field on that one. Thank you, Representative Schumacher, for bringing that point up, because it's exactly the same thing we were hearing over here as well. So, Commissioner, please.
Chair Hoffman, Representative Chair Schumacher, correct?
Perfect.
Days, yeah.
Did a great job. Even though they're guests of the Senate over here, they're not officially, but yeah, you can do that.
Okay, very, very good. So the first thing I want to say is we certainly heard the feedback that you're giving from providers too, that notice was not sufficient. We've heard that loud and clear, and we'll certainly do our best to be in engagement proactively with providers so they have sufficient notice, can plan ahead, can understand what's coming in the future, the request was for it to be iterative, multimodal, multimedia. So we've heard that feedback loud and clear. We accept that feedback, take accountability for communicating and engaging more effectively with providers and advocates and community and you all. So certainly take that feedback. With respect to the decision, we were trying to initiate the process in a way such that we could begin the prepayment review process timely so that we could be ready to pay by the 27th. That was the aim. And for us to have enough time to do that, we had to essentially pause payment at 10 p.m. on the 23rd. Again, take the feedback about being clear, about letting folks know, providers, that was coming. But we needed sufficient time in our minute partners as well to make the system upgrades with respect to MMIS so that we could either hold claims individually or pay them based on the flags we got from the vendor in this new enhanced prepayment review process. So to allow sufficient time and to be able to pay them by the 27th, that was when we initiated that or suspension or pause in claims processing. That was a one-time thing to I think your other question about, is there a change to the calendar we need to make and proactively communicate that? The answer is, at this point, no. So that was a one-time kind of 2-day wedge, as we're calling it, that basically caused some providers, 40% of claims, to your point, were delayed for 4 weeks rather than 2 as a result of that. Providers that submitted claims before 10 p.m. on the 23rd were paid on the 13th. We were able to get enough work done to process payment and have approved, reviewed and approved or unflagged claims paid by the 13th of January if they were submitted by 10 p.m. on the 23rd of December.
Representative Schumacher.
Thank you, Senator, and I'll leave it there with that one. The other point I had was about the contract that you have for the vendor for flagging some of these things. Deputy Commissioner Connolly, you had said that it's the concerns that the vendors raise to us is when they're going through the prepayment review. It's the concerns that the vendor raises to us. But it's my understanding that it's the department that told them what to raise for issues, and that they're the ones, that you're the ones, and Commissioner, you had made the point too that there's always applying new tests, you're looking, you're checking, you're refining. It's the department that's doing that. It's not the vendor themselves. The vendor, from what I understand, is establishing the system or the programming for it, but it's the department's decisions on what to look for and what to check and what to test for. Is that accurate?
Assistant Commissioner or Commissioner?
Chair, Chair and Chair. I would say that is not entirely accurate. It is a collaborative process. So the vendor brings knowledge and experience from across the nation on how to look for fraudulent activity in the claims. And then our team provides the specific rules and nuances of the Medicaid program as administered in the state of Minnesota and as has been submitted, through our state plan and waivers. And so ultimately, the vendor flags the claim, and then when it comes back to DHS, we make the final decision on whether something didn't need to be flagged because that's the way this is administered in the state of Minnesota. Then we would correct the vendor and inform them, and they would adjust it for the future. So it is very much a partnership, and they are bringing knowledge from across the nation that we don't have to the process. So it's not just us, but it's a partnership.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification on there. That's all for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Newer, any thoughts about today, and we can go home?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome back again. And as we get started, session is coming in few weeks, so we've got lots of questions about that whole process, even clarifying that the vendor does not have the authority to do the work for DHS. It's DHS that is going to do the work that is required under the state rules. So we will have more, conversation on who does what and how, so that people understand that how system work. And I think there's some confusion. I think I had somebody say there are no clients. I just wanted to get that clarity that every recipient who is eligible for services are the individuals who are identified, and billing is based on those individuals. So clients exist, but the services don't exist for most of the program issues or challenges that we have seen. I've heard about the due process. I don't see anything in the statute under 256B.064. Likewise, nothing in the federal rules under 455.23. So those are conversations in terms of administrative reviews that we have to take a look at. And I'm looking at Liam from Discon. I think we need to reshuffle how 256B.064 is right now under the current statute. It's confusing. It doesn't provide good guidance, and we need to be able to provide that to make sure everyone understands. If we have a prepayment, we will also have a post-payment process. We will also be building on the payment withhold and everything in clarity, including figuring out when to apply the good cause, when to apply administrative review based on a state requirement under the permission of the federal rules. So we've got plenty of work that we need to fix during session, and we don't have enough time. We need to get to work. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, members, for being here today, and thank you, Commissioner Gandhi, for bringing your whole team and having this discussion with us as we look at what's going to be needed in the upcoming session. And if it's an indication today of what those conversations are, it sounds like we've had some agreement on what needs to be done in the future. So thank you and your team for being here. And members, thank you very much for being part of this. Tomorrow is going to be the focus on the providers and the people receiving services. And so we look forward to seeing you then. And I promise not to run over Sven. I realize, I look at the time and I ran over and I shouldn't have done that. Oh, well. Have a great day. We are adjourned. It's good to be back.